G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 1st of September. Now we haven't had any major announcement yet, but there are announcements that, if true, but they lack context, but if true, could shape things going forward and determine whether or not there will be a meeting. Before I continue, I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, The Power Games, Into the Elsebound, and The Erotic Tales from the Empire. Thank you to all those who support the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, all my links are in the link tree. Buy my books, buy my merch, and buy my books. Alright, so Putin has met with Xi Jinping and later with Modi. Xi Jinping, of course, is not happy with the West in general, particularly America. But Modi is talking about the lack of efforts of peace talk, apparently. He's actually spoken to the man on the screen as well, apparently. And everybody on one side is saying Europe isn't interested in peace. Now, the left, who pretty much believe everything that Zelensky says, thinks the sun shines out of his ass, thinks he can walk on water and can do no wrong, and the same goes for his sycophants, who keep saying that, I met with Putin, he doesn't interested in peace, but right there, in the man's own words, right, this guy, senior advisor, has called for the United States to leverage, to force the Kremlin to do what he wants. That is not how wars work, you stupid muppet. You don't lose a war and then make demands. You are only going to be ridiculed for the rest of your freaking life. But the left have no shame. It's not their lives. It's not their children's lives. These men, it's not their finances or fortunes. These men are protected. Their families are protected. Their livelihoods and incomes are protected. These politicians are jobs for life. And of course, this is the glorious revolution. This is the left's ultimate dream, is to have a job for life. To be on the land and the milk of honey. And speaking of politicians who've outlasted their use but around with forever because they have jobs for life, is Ursula Always Lying, who also wants to talk about putting deployments of troops to Europe, deploying European troops to Ukraine. A multinational troop deployment with the backstop of the Americans. Again, this is their delusions, right? This idea, right, that you create this conflict so you can then occupy Ukraine. So they can have their troop deployments, they can have their little war games, so they can put missiles pointed at Moscow and say, do what we say, Putin, or else. Time and time again, they're telling you what they're up to, But time and time again, the truth is still putting on its running. The truth is still pulling. Right now, the truth's sitting there barefoot, looking at its shoes and socks. Meanwhile, all the hyperbolic headlines. Ukraine is advancing. Ukraine wiped out the invaders. Time and time again, people are watching the same garbage from the same garbage tier pro-Ukrainian sites. But the battlefield map does not show that any of these sites, according to every pro-Ukrainian site, the Ukrainians are almost at Moscow. They're just such pathetic liars. But the patheticness of it all is Ukrainians are sitting there watching this and cheering it on. As if murder is a sport. And you were warned about this. Now, BBC has reported parts of Putin's speech. Putin had a regional security conference in China. He defended his decision to invade Ukraine, blaming the war on the West. And, of course, people, particularly the BBC, won't tell you that before the Russian invasion, Ukraine was killing its own civilians because they were ethnic Russians. Now, following the Alaska meeting, Wickoff said Putin agreed to security guarantees. Moscow has yet to confirm this. Actually, no. Moscow has said they're willing to talk, I believe was the exact words from Lavrov. People have told you time and time again, yet time and time again, people will go to the BBC, read what the BBC says, instead of going to the people who are doing the talking, because you can read what they say. Instead, they listen to the Western media, because somehow they trust the Western media, despite the fact the Western media has lied consistently. Most of their lies, of course, are admissions. And because you don't know what you don't know, you only know that they're lying, that Tessa Wong is lying, when you go to other sources of information. You would not know that Al Jazeera is lying if you just believe that Russia only attacks civilians. This is a narrative that is permeated through the entire Western media, and nobody, other than very few people, are calling this lie out. The Ukrainian military whines about Russia attacking them, then claims that they managed to shoot them all down. Then they promise to retaliate, but you go back and you then see that Russia was attacked. So Russia was attacked, then Russia fires drones back, and then Ukraine says, we have to retaliate to Russian attacks. This is the standard tactic of the left. The left create a crisis, film the response, blame the defender as the aggressor, okay? The guy who was assassinated yesterday was the commander who attacked Donetsk. He is the guy who started the Ukraine war. Do you think maybe Putin might have killed him? But in reality, wouldn't it make more sense if Zelensky killed him because he was a loose end? Couldn't have him going out writing a book saying that how he instigated the Ukraine war. and how he helped put Zelensky in power as a sock puppet regime to buy legitimacy for the now Ukraine's armed forces have dismissed Russia's claim of a successful summer as we go into a Ukrainian autumn. Zelensky and his copious sycophants, the parasites who not only rob Europe but Ukraine, couldn't defend a warm cup of piss, right? But Russia, only using 20% of its armed forces, whereas Ukraine is desperately holding on with massive help from multiple nations, is facing increasing desperation. Now we have multiple attacks again on the buffer zone, which I believe amount to nothing more than keeping Ukrainians spread out and keeping up the pressure on Ukraine, which is cheaper than... It's always cheaper when the enemy comes to you. All right, so we have combat along the front. Where is this apparently still fighting here? Now, we don't know if there was a Ukrainian offensive or not, but Ukraine claims to have conducted 5 successful offensives. All right, so there's a little bit of evidence here and there that Russia's withdrawn from here, but they're still, it's only a kilometre, but of course they foam at the mouth. So, typical propaganda. When Russia advances, it's insignificant. When Ukraine advances by less, it's significant. You know, it's the rule of propaganda, hyperbolic. But Russia's advanced in other areas, not by much, and in some areas they are stalled. And in other areas, there is intense fighting with little progress. There is no single word to describe, right, progress when the amount of land that Russia takes has consistently been small, deliberately been small, systematic, so that they can clear Ukrainian saboteurs, Ukrainian mines, Ukrainian weapon caches, and process the civilians. And, of course, mobilise assets, particularly air defence, because without air defence, the Russian troops would be overwhelmed by drones. That's a fact, right? As well as logistics. So there isn't much progress here again, but there is progress. So whatever offensive was here is gone. Though this remains. But in other areas where it counts, Russia is still going, right? So they got pushed back a little. But where's the Ukrainian offensive? It isn't rolling on. You don't see blue dots, do you? Again, those who consistently watch the Ukrainians and their propaganda are deluding themselves. But this is what Cope and See does. Now, there's been a drone attack on Sevastopol yesterday. None today, but this is the cope they have. Because how many people are going to even read that little? That says 2 hours ago. But that was yesterday. Same thing yesterday. Now, it could be that they conducted a second attack. But see, these videos, they don't work. Most of the time, they've never worked. See? And often, there's no indication of where or when they were filmed. But one thing is certain. Now, this is a repeat of a story that I think was originally in Kiev Independent. Nearly 60% of Ukrainians want cessation of hostilities and peace talks to begin, and they want Zelensky to compromise. Only 33% spoke in favour of continuing the fighting. Those 33% are those who are getting paid to man checkpoints and, go round up. The people who are profiting off the war, of course, are going to, as well as the neo-nationalists who think that killing Russians is going to make you stronger. Typical low IQ mentality. But the majority, and soon, that is going to translate to massive unrest in Ukraine. Now, one of the things that may shape attitudes towards the war to come is, look at them all dressed up in those, as if they're on a British crime drama. The suspected assassin of the Ukrainian MP and former parliamentary speaker has been arrested. Zelensky gives his usual hyperbolic speech, throws in unnecessary adjectives, talks about the ongoing investigation, and of course established the circumstances of this. Man, it's easy, okay? Probably tearing apart the man's home, then they're going to put it all back together, and then the media are going to be paraded through, and they're going to be showing books on Putin, they're going to be showing books on Lavrov, they're going to be showing YouTube videos. Of course, the man's going to be heavily make-upped, and he's going to have his hands behind his back the whole time. And he's going to be talking how he struck a blow for the Russian people. This is all staged. I would be honestly surprised if I was wrong. We know, though the motive is unclear, rumour has it he was a disgruntled local. He and his Social Nationalist Party of Ukraine, one of those who joined in the Maidan coup and later helped oust various other, put in and oust other presidents, put Zelensky in and helped organise. This is a guy who's organised militias. And if you haven't been paying attention, about once a month there's news leaks through of an attack on an army recruiter, massive protests, people dragging their sons and out of recruitment vans, massive protests at funerals. People are sick of this man. He has probably been organising local militias, shaking down local businessmen, going after people who aren't fighting in the war, and people are sick of him because it's not his children. This man and many others in Ukraine have all sent their kids to other countries to hide. He took part in the murder of trade unionists. People who lost loved ones will most likely hired this man. It was probably Ukrainian organised crime. The war has been bad for business lately. Okay? More and more, the arms smuggling. They've been smuggling arms out of Ukraine to other countries and were caught. Russia, of course, has accused Europe of being a war party. Ursula von der Leyen in particular, Keir Starmer, the French president, the Merkel's ghost in Germany. Sorry, I should say her tampon, Merkel 2.0. They're all considered the war party. They always claim that they have to contain Russia, they have to break up Russia. They're always talking about countering Russian influence. Anytime someone gets successful, other than Europe, there's a war. Look at all this goes back to World War One. Serbia was rising. So a French socialist goes through. A French socialist in England goes there and kills the Archduke, working with local nationalists to spark another revolution in Hungary. So the Germans goes, and of course they were the Bolsheviks, and the Bolsheviks came out of Ukraine. Ukraine has been the hotbed of socialism. Okay, this country needs to be locked down. Their citizens forced for decades to go to cinemas and look at the crimes against humanity that socialism has enacted. Not one politician should have. Not one. Everybody should be forced. Ukraine has to face its dark past, its corruption, and realise that if the politicians are corrupt, it's because the peoples are corrupt. You can't keep blaming poverty. Major Scott Ritter, who, let's see if, he's well known as the UN/US arms inspector in Iraq. He was the one who confronted Biden in 1998 and said there's no weapons of mass destruction. Biden gave that long speech about, yes, but we drive in limos. We know better than you. We have better sources than you. And it's like, what's better than what's a better source on Iraq than the actual weapons inspector who's been there and seen what's going on? Oh no, so Biden knows better, right? Yeah, he was a Marine intelligence officer, but he's mostly known as the UN weapons inspector. He was part of talks with Russia. He knows Russia. He's gotten deals with Russia. Ukraine is depleting its genetic pool. But that's what the anti-humanists want. This is a demonic sacrifice. Okay? Ukraine is finished because all you'll have left is women without husbands, and they'll flood Ukraine with migrants. Because that's what they do. They talk about one race, human race, they want to wipe out. They keep talking about diversity. One race is not, race mixing everybody until there's one race is the opposite of diversity. Destroying nations is the opposite of diversity. While they talk with the left hand, the right, it's never believe what the left talks. Always believe what they do. Now, it's not just the massive losses. Draft evasion, we've seen the protests. Desertions, we've heard about the cases. Now, we have no idea, but it is possible that the Ukrainian army is sitting in many places not fighting the Russians. And the Russians aren't attacking them. But it's only possible. But it's hard from the grand aerial view sometimes to know exactly what is going on in the areas that are unmarked, or because there's only out of this vast distance, these circles don't represent the size of the conflict. 148. It's less than, basically around 14% of the front is engaged in combat, with most of it concentrated in this small area. Most of it concentrated on here, and most of this could have been avoided if Ukraine honoured the Minsk II Accords. But because the far left control Wikipedia, everybody who looks up the Minsk Accords gets directed to the Wikipedia and gets told the pro-Ukrainian narrative. And because most people do not critically think, most people don't like it when they're told they don't critically think, that most people trust without verification. If you're a right-winger, if you're a genuine patriot, you would listen to Reagan's words. Trust but verify. So thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, or scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you for your time. See you in the next video, and bye for now.